Today, I want to talk about masculine and feminine energies and the different manifestations of both of these energies. So, let's start with the feminine. The feminine energy is very nurturing, it's soft, it is considerate of other people, it is a nurturing spirit, it creates life, it gives birth to life. And so, there is a softness with the feminine energy. It is the more spiritual energy. And not only does it create life and it creates something pure, but it has less power. And with less power comes less corruption. And I think that is why the female energy is more spiritual and is attracted to pure things, has a love for children, it has a love for spirituality and the internal world. It is also a receiving energy. It depends on others for its happiness, for its protection, for its sustenance. It is the more emotional creature. So women are more emotional, they think with their emotions, they act on their emotions, and they give preference to their emotions over reason. In comparison to men, when they're in a relationship, the women, it can be a more childlike energy. It can be a bit more fun and a bit more relaxed and a bit more carefree. And it can be carefree when it knows it feels safe, when it knows it's taken care of. It is also self-interested in the sense of it doesn't chase. It doesn't chase men. It doesn't chase love. It loves itself and it nourishes itself and supports itself. And that is how a feminine energy preserves itself. Whereas if you look at masculine energy, it is the direct opposite of the feminine energy. It is the giving energy, it is the providing energy, it is the protecting energy. It protects its family from harm, it protects its people and its society from harm. And so it can be violent, it can be aggressive, but their aggressiveness exists for a reason. It serves a purpose, and a good purpose, which is to protect its family from harm and to protect its society too. So although there are a lot of problems now with men being violent, we can understand where it comes from and we can place it in the role it plays in nature and why it's there, why men have this violent nature to begin with. The masculine energy is also independent. It doesn't need other people. It doesn't rely on other people. It doesn't rely on anyone to help. It has to be independent. And that is the opposite of women, where women are dependent on their friends for their happiness. Women are dependent on their partner to make them feel happy, to make them feel loved. Whereas when you're the giving energy, in your giving, that becomes the way you feel happy. And the way women feel happy is by receiving. And I've come to realize the wisdom and the purpose of a lot of our natures. The masculine energy is more worldly, whereas the feminine is more spiritual. It is driven to acquire money, to acquire worldly goods, to acquire things of the world. And when you look at these two energies, they're so directly opposite. The reason that they exist were to complement one another. It wasn't there to make one overpower the other and abuse the other. It was that these two energies complement one another. And whatever was lacking in the other, it was supposed to make up for in their partner. Whatever was missing in you, it was to be made up by a partner. And that is the role and purpose of having masculine and feminine energy. And it's not to say that you can't have masculine energy. You need to have both masculine and feminine energy, and there needs to be a variety. You need to learn how to depend on people and to ask for help and to ask for what you want and receive. You also need to learn how to be independent, and you need to be able to balance those things. It's not to say you need to be completely dependent and not independent. You need to be completely spiritual and not chase after things of the world. No, it's that you mainly encompass the feminine energy, but there are parts of your personality that are masculine. And that is different from people to people. Some women are very feminine, and they love to be provided for, they love to be protected, but then they are very worldly. They really want things of the world and they're not as spiritual. Or you get some women that are very driven and very independent and don't want to depend on men for their finances, but then they're very nurturing and they're very emotional. You have so many different manifestations in everyone, and that is why you need to find someone who kind of is your other half, in the sense that if you're a very emotional person, you need someone who is more integrated in their rationality. If you are someone who is a receiver, you need someone who's going to be a giver. If you are someone who's very spiritual, you need someone who's a bit worldly, because you need to balance those, because it will lead you to an extreme. All of these qualities have extremes on both ends. It's not too good to be too emotional, and it's not too good to be too logical all of the time. It's not good to be spiritual all of the time. You need to be able to balance that and have some things of the world and have a bit of material. You can't always be childlike, you have to be responsible at times. So you need to find someone who complete your lack on the other end. If you're nurturing, you need someone who's protecting, who's a protector, because they will allow you to nurture in a protective and safe space. You can't have two of the same, because then if both of you are nurturing, who's going to do the protecting? If both of you are nurturing and there's no one to protect, then that means there's a risk, because no one can protect you in situations where you feel threatened or you feel unsafe. You need someone who's going to create life, and you need someone to sustain that. And so we have godly qualities. If you think about it, to be nurturing is a godly quality, to be a protector is a godly quality, to create life is a godly quality, to sustain life is a godly quality. Not all of them are godly qualities, because God is independent. He doesn't really need anyone. He doesn't need to receive anything from you, and he doesn't really depend on anyone. So not everything is a godly quality, but some of these qualities are very godly qualities, which is very interesting to notice. And the reason why I wanted to look at masculine and feminine energy is because I want to look at them without demonizing any of them, without demonizing the feminine for being weak, and without demonizing the masculine for being aggressive or overpowering. It is to appreciate the masculine and feminine in their own rights, in their own regard. They both have their places. We don't want to shame one group of people that a certain energy. We don't want to shame men for having masculine qualities. We don't want to shame women for having feminine qualities. We want to say that these qualities make up your personality, and they're shaped by your environment and by your experiences in life. And there's nothing wrong with being dependent. There's nothing wrong with, for that person who's a receiver and who is dependent, they would like someone who's a giver all of the time. They want someone who's going to provide for them. But whereas another person might not like that. So it's each to their own. But it is that we recognize that all of it has its place. We shouldn't be demonizing men for being masculine, nor should we be demonizing women for being feminine. One can be more powerful than the other, but each energy comes with its own power. Women have their own power, men have their own power. Men's power is in their physical strength, and a women's power is in her emotional and spiritual nature. We can demonize being emotional as a bad thing, but it is also the very thing that gets men to do the things that we want them to do. It is because we're emotional we can get our way. and they have to put aside their reason and rationality and just be understanding. Even if they didn't understand, they can excuse women's behavior or women's actions because they know that women are emotional on certain times and on certain days. And they're also willing to do things for you if they see a more spiritual side, if they see qualities of innocence, if they see qualities of purity in you. They're willing to do anything for that because perhaps they're impure and they look for purity and they're attracted to purity. And so when they see a woman who has purity in her, they would do anything for that woman. So that is my take on masculine and feminine energy. And maybe it would be a good idea to look at your own masculine and feminine qualities and see what qualities you lack, what qualities you have more of, and then use the qualities that you have more of to understand your strengths and to understand your weaknesses. Look at the qualities that you lack and then try to work on bringing those qualities into your life.